So we're here with Matt Gopal today from SageTech. Matt is the head of Stakeholder Engagement and has very kindly given up some time to record a few short interviews with us to explain what SageTech is and how it can help in reducing your volatile gas emissions from your anaesthetics. So hello, Matt, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you, Hannah.
I thought it might be nice if we start with how you got involved with volatile capture technology.
Yeah, it's been quite a strange journey in some respects. So I started as a clinical vet. I did 22 years in practice, from one-man band up to sort of hospital status and all the rest of it. And in 2016, I was in my consulting room, and I had a personal phone call from a friend of mine, a human anaesthetist, and he phoned up and said, Matt, would it be all right if I came down and tried to capture some of your anaesthetic gases that go out as waste? And I said, yeah, that's absolutely fine, but why on earth would you want to do that? And that's really where the story started. So Dr. Seb Brown came down to the surgery with this little canister and started explaining what they wanted to do. And I was completely hooked from that moment, thinking, I can't believe that I've just had 22 years of practice and I've been expelling, pumping out of the building all of the waste anaesthetic gases that I have actually been responsible for using. I basically stopped my clinical career and joined forces with the three or four of them at that point in time that were SageTech in a laboratory in Brixham, Devon, trying to work out how you could capture these waste molecules of drug and then how you could extract those molecules back into a liquid. And then the plan was to be able to purify that liquid to go back into clinical use. So that's kind of when my story started. And there were a couple of really key figures that stood out for me. One was I was given a market research manual that was all about volatile usage globally. So obviously there's a lot in human medicine used, and I was thumbing through this great tome of information of all the volumes of the different agents. So isoflurane, sevoflurane, and desflurane. Desflurane's mainly used in human medicine. And it suddenly had a section on veterinary. And I thought, oh, this is me. I need to, really start paying attention. So I read through the section on veterinary volatile anaesthetic agents. And the first line said that 30% of the global use of volatile anaesthetic agents is through veterinary medicine. And I nearly fell over. So I thought we'd definitely got to do something about this. And that's kind of where it started.
So that's really interesting. So you had this sort of pivotal moment where you suddenly thought, wow, I've been contributing to global warming through all the anaesthetics that I've been conducting in my practice. And I had no idea that these anaesthetic gases are actually really potent greenhouse gases, and they are contributing to the global warming and climate crisis that we're seeing. And that's really kind of ignited a fire in you to then move across into this field. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the global use at that time was 3.1 million tons of CO2 equivalents, figure that blew me away.
And is that figure across human and animal, or is that veterinary only?
Correct. No, that's the total for volatile agent use. Yeah. And that was in 2016-17. Now, there's been quite a change within human medicine with the use of desflurane, which is a way more potent greenhouse gas than isoflurane and sevoflurane, even though those two are serious or potent greenhouse gases themselves. So, the fact that desflurane has decreased in the human world will have made a difference, but there is still, a heck of a lot of emissions equivalence that's attributable to volatile agents.
So, what's your role within SageTech then?
So, yeah, it's been, again, my role, head of stakeholder engagement. I've been involved really from the start with the development of the device. So we made a decision very early on that we would focus on the human side of things. And then it was always planned that we would come on to the veterinary side of things. So my role is engaging with different bodies that are that we need to engage with. So we've had a lot of engagement with the NHS. We've had a lot of engagement with clinicians and green groups as well across the NHS. My other main role has been the development of the device that we use in our human and vet side. Because we're a human company that produces a medical device, we're governed under certain regulatory governance. What that means is we have to undergo lots of safety testing and compliance because we're attaching to a human anaesthetic machine. So that's all in the human world. And we've worked very closely with really big companies such as GE, Mindray, Gettinger, Draeger, all that make human anaesthetic machines. And the reason I tell you this is that because we're governed under that, our veterinary device has to be governed under the same regulations and compliance. So safety is absolutely paramount to everything. And actually through that, I now sit on an ISO standard that is writing the global standard for volatile capture devices.
Oh, that's fantastic. So of the volatile gases that we tend to regularly use in veterinary medicine, which are the most potent? What are the differences between the different gases?
Yeah, so sevoflurane is less impactful than isoflurane, and yet isoflurane is probably the more commonly used at the moment within veterinary medicine. Isoflurane is a more potent greenhouse gas.
We know that practices are thinking more and more about sustainability, particularly about their impact on the climate, on global warming. With practices looking at trying to move towards net zero, why is this such an important thing to be implementing within your practice, or certainly to be learning about and having better awareness of?
One of the things that I find quite interesting is that if you look at emissions, so there's scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions. Scope 1 emissions are the direct emissions that you as a practice make. So they might be your boiler that's burning in your practice. They might be the cars that you use for visits. There's all sorts of direct emissions, and actually anaesthetic gases make up part of your direct emissions to the environment. There are also indirect emissions. So those can be things such as the electricity that you use within the practice. There's an impact that making that electricity has had at wherever that electricity is coming from. If you combine the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions and you look at that figure, between 15 and 20% of that combined scope 1 and scope 2 figure is attributable to anaesthetic gases. And that figure in itself kind of stopped me in my tracks as well, thinking, well, hang on, if I'm looking at this whole big sphere, and yet a slice of that sphere, almost between 15 and 20% is solely down to anaesthetic gases, then we really need to wake up and do something about it, because we use them all the time. Our system is involved with a vet dock, and that's the physical piece of equipment that the vet can fits into. So you have one vet dock per anaesthetic workstation, and it literally takes the waste hose from your breathing circuit past the APL valve. So we're on the waste side of the APL valve, and that gas is passed through our vet dock, and by going through the vet dock it goes into the vet canister, and it's at that point that the waste volatile is captured. So I should just say a little bit about the canister itself, because the capture media inside there, we've tested many capture materials. We've tried silicas, we've tried zeolites, we've tried carbons, we've tried all sorts of different materials that are able to capture these molecules on a molecular level. And we have a capture media now that is highly efficient at binding volatiles. It's hydrophobic to a particular degree because we recognise that there's a lot of moisture in an anaesthetic circuit. And it binds and it holds the molecules of waste anaesthetic very tightly. But of course, it has to be held at such a level that you can actually extract it as well. It can't hang on to it too tightly, otherwise you'd never be able to extract it at a later date. So that's the sort of the technical journey. One of the things that we've recognised is that approximately, and this depends on clinical practice, if you don't have a patient in the circuit at all, we capture 100% of everything that leaves the vaporizer gets held in the canister. When you put a patient in the way, you can lose volatile. A very small amount will be lost in leaks in the circuit. Approximately 5% is metabolized by the patient. So that's changed, that's metabolized and lost. And then the other big reservoir of drug that we don't get exposure to is that dose of drug that goes away with the patient into the recovery area. So once a patient has come round or is extubated, they still maintain a degree of volatile in their tidal volume, and that is then exhaled over time in recovery. But essentially, we would be looking at between 80 to 90%, that mass that leaves the vaporizer ends up in the vet canister captured. So it's a very efficient way of realising that the waste.
How does the technology work? How have you developed it, and what does it sort of look like from a practice's perspective if they want to think about implementing it in their practice?
The dock, I mentioned the vet dock and the vet canister. So the vet dock is something that is usually, or a device that is usually wall mounted next to an anaesthetic workstation. We do have floor stands for those areas where people don't want them attached or screwed to the wall, essentially. And the vet dock will accept a vet can. Now, in clinical use, when you're using this system, you would have everything attached so that all the waste ends up in the vet canister. These canisters will last about 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, depending on clinical use. Obviously, if you've got a very high throughput surgical list day in, day out, you're going to get through the vet canisters quicker. If you're implementing low flow or lower flow anesthesia, then that would elongate the time that vet canister can be on the vet dock. So the vet dock actually has a screen on the front that's a visual display for the user to recognise in percentage how full the canister is. So we actually, the canister is actually weighed in real time all the time, and it's the weight gain that depicts how full the canister is. So as you move over that period of time of use, the percentage goes up until it reaches full. And what we've implemented is that when the visual display shows 100% full and you have an audible alarm to indicate full, it's actually not essentially totally full. There's a buffer zone in there, and that buffer zone is in there for a very good reason, and that reason is safety. So if the alarm goes off and the user recognises that, they still have 4 hours use left at 2% at 2 litres a minute, which is a high usage. But we wanted to ensure that the user has enough time to finish whatever surgical procedure, and that they can then, at the end of that procedure, they can then deal with changing the canister. The Aldesorbers or Aldesorber type filters that should be weighed every day, they will just break through. So once they reach their full limit, you've then got waste anaesthetic going into the workspace environment. With the SageTech system, the alarm prevents that from happening. So it decreases the risk for workplace exposure.
Yeah, really important to bring in the other side of it, that it's not just about the emissions and reducing your greenhouse gas emissions. It's also about the health and safety side of the wider impact of these gases in the environment and to the people that are working with them on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Um, so you talk about the vet can becomes full.
Yeah.
What then happens to the vet can at that point?
The vet can itself, these are all reusable. So they're made of a material that's very durable, and they're supposed to be used up to 50 times. So they can go on this journey round and round and round. The journey for them starts at your wholesaler. So we as SageTech offer the vet doc as a managed service. That's one part of it. And then if you like, the canisters are purchased from your wholesaler at a particular fee. And that fee covers the delivery, it covers the usage, and then importantly, it covers the return of that vet canister. Now, that vet canister, because it has harboured or it's captured a volatile agent, which is hazardous waste, the vet canister itself has to be treated in such a way that it follows the correct compliance for the Environment Agency. We have hazardous waste notes that are sent out with those canisters to enable that compliance. So again, the practice is ensuring that it's staying legal as it should do with the Environment Agency regulation for hazardous waste.
So can you just explain a little bit about how you're evaluating this technology in a clinical setting? So you've talked a bit about the NHS side, but from a veterinary perspective, how are you evaluating this technology?
Yeah, so we've got a few sort of fairly sizable pilots that are, when I say pilots, they've actually been out there for over a year now. So we did a lot of clinical testing. Somebody that's been very supportive of us is Ellie West at Linnaeus, and has really helped to get more clinical data. So we have approximately 140 of our devices actually out in clinical use, and they've been out there for sort of probably over a year now. And we're capturing really well. We're getting some very useful data back. We've had really good feedback from users, so that's something that we, obviously with any device, we want to make it easy for people. We want to make it less cumbersome and not interfere with work flow, so that people can just get on with their day's work. And we've had really positive feedback so far with the clinical use of the devices.
That's great. So it's going to be a bit of a watch this space with how that comes along, and then what you can share from the work that you've been doing in those clinical settings around the use of the device.
Yeah, and we've started getting a lot of input from private practice or independents as well, and other groups. So yeah, Laura Binney at Excel Vets and Kat Curtis at Vets for Pets, and lots of different people, IVC, Sarah Heath. So the community of sustainability led people, I would say, has really pulled together. It feels like we're trying to do this together, which is a great place to be.
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting technology, and certainly is something that we all need to raise our awareness of, so that we understand the impact anaesthetic gases are having on global warming and the environment. So we can think, how can we minimize those going forwards? It's good for the planet, it's going to be good for the people, and it's going to be good for our animals. So a win-win-win.
Yes, exactly,
Um,
exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. It's been lovely chatting to you. Just let us know where people can find out more. What's your website?
Yeah, so there's a SageTech Veterinary website, and if you need any information, there's an info@sagetechveterinary.com, that you can send anything into. But yeah, we've got our website out there. Just make sure you go onto the veterinary one and not the human one, because you'll end up in all sorts of knots.
Perfect. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time, Matt. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Not at all. Great to see you, Hannah. Thank you.